We're going to look at three different examples of tuning applications in bitKlavier that cover a range of different techniques and approaches that might be of use. Before we get into those three examples, I want to point out one basic thing about tuning in bitKlavier. And most of the stuff we're going to talk about today has to do with offsets, where you want to offset the tuning system by a certain amount, basically tune it sharp or flat. And you can do that within a gallery in very specific ways, but you can also just globally set the tuning for bitKlavier. Under gallery settings, you'll see the A4 reference frequency of 440. So if you're doing something in early music and want to be at 415, or you're doing something in, where you're playing with percussion instruments that are at 442, you can adjust that here. And that's a global change that will change everything that you're running in bitKlavier, move it up and down accordingly. So this is a very useful thing to be aware of. But today we're mostly going to spend time looking at three different examples. And the first example is this piece here, Georg Friedrich Haas, Limited Approximations. Super cool piece, and it has 6 pianos in it, each one off by a very small fraction. So one is a 6th tone sharp to the default, a 12th tone, then there's this sort of default, say A440, minus a 12th tone, minus a 6th tone, and minus a quarter tone. So this is all great, and now compositionally, if you want to explore this, of course it's rather inconvenient to go and actually get 6 pianos and get them tuned up this way, just to explore and see how it works. Let's actually listen to a moment of this excerpt from an actual recording, so we have it in our ears, and then we'll look at how to do this in bitKlavier. And this is really like a workflow composition process idea in terms of how to facilitate this kind of work when you're creating something. So here's a bit of this piece by Georg Friedrich Haas. So what's kind of amazing here is we're hearing the piano, normally fixed pitched instrument, seemingly gliss up and down. And it has a quality of the so-called shepherd tone, where something seems to be imperceptibly and infinitely glissing up and down. And he does that here in a number of ways. We can hear this, this G sharp here in this piano that's a 12th tone down, then it's followed 6th tone down, a quarter tone down, and then it goes to a G natural, but a sharp G natural, and then a less sharp G natural. So that G sharp basically slowly glisses down, and one of the things that comes from the so-called shepherd tone are the dynamics, where each new tone comes in from nothing and then gradually fades up, and so you get this fade where one pitch is fading out while a new pitch is fading in, and it just has this quality of just gradually changing pitch. So how to do this, I'm using Dorico here, and I'll show you how I set this up in bitKlavier and Dorico. So you could do this in Sibelius or Finale as well. So under play here, you'll see what I've done. I've set up, 7 pianos? Oh no, 6 pianos. This is, I'm not sure what that's there for. So I have 6 pianos, 6 different bitKlaviers, and I've got them assigned to the different instruments here. So let's take a look at bitKlavier here for this. And basically I just have one gallery here. Where'd it go? It's under tutorials here, don't mind me. Haas, limited approximations. And in this gallery, I have the 6 different pianos, all tuned differently. So this one is the 1/6 tone sharp. Let's look at the tuning preparation. And this is where we get to the super useful offset parameter in tuning. And this is where you can offset the tuning of any preparation that is connected to this tuning preparation by a certain number of cents. So a 6th tone is 200 over 6, 200 cents over 6, so 33 1/3 cents. So this piano, anything that's connected to this tuning, which is literally just the direct sound of a piano, will be a 6th tone sharp. Let's take a look at the 12th tone one. It looks the same, except now it's 66.67 cents sharp. Then we've got, let's go to the negative quarter tone. For instance, this one is minus 50 cents. So I have each one of these. I got to make sure I set this back. This was the 6th tone sharp. If I open up this one here, this should be the 12th tone sharp. And let's go down to the last one. This should be the quarter tone flat here. Okay. So we have the 6 different virtual pianos, all tuned up differently. And let's listen to it. Actually, it's not going to sound as good as the real performance, of course. And one thing to note is that Dorico, haven't been able to figure out how to get it to do dynamics separately by hand. It just does the dynamics for each instrument. So like this moment here, we've got a conflict between the forte and the pianissimo. So we don't really get the nice crossfades. But compositionally, to be able to spend some time with this and explore different sonorities and textures and so on is pretty useful. So here's how this goes. Okay, stop that there. Great. So that's just this one example from Haas with the individual pianos offset by a fixed amount of cents. Let's look at a different example. And again, now this is really an example that is meant to be of use to a performer and using bitKlavier to explore and practice tuning in different ways. So this is a piece by Chelsea called Ho. It's 5 songs for solo soprano voice. And in it, you'll see in this opening, which we'll listen to in a moment, these notations where the singer is at times supposed to go a quarter tone sharp, come back, and other times go a quarter tone flat. So that's, pretty fine tuning around a single pitch. And I actually had this request from a composer, Leonardo Labrada in Brazil, who was working with a singer and wanted to have a way of helping her practice the tuning. And so let's listen to a bit of that so we have it in our ears. So this is the beginning of Ho. Okay, so, we got through the first few lines there so we could hear those changes. So how best to practice this? I've created a little gallery, which I will use to show you. I'm going to open this up here. Where did it go? Tutorials, maybe. No, it must be up here. I've got a lot of galleries here. There it is. No. All right. So this is actually a really nice example for looking at modifications with tuning, which is something that I use a lot, and it's super powerful. So with a modification, and just for your information modification, I can create with a C for change. And once I connect it to a particular preparation, it turns the color of that preparation. And then when I double click on it, I can choose whatever parameters I want to modify whenever that modification is triggered. So I've set this one up here with 3 modifications. We have this, let's see, what's this one? This one sets the offset to 0, so tuned where expected. This one sets the offset to 50 cents or a quarter tone flat. And this one sets the offset to a quarter tone sharp. Another useful little tip here, if I click on this keyboard, you can see which keys are set to activate that modification. Of course, I can double click on it as well to change it or whatever, but sometimes it's useful to be able to see that, okay, so this low C is what sets it back to normal. The B below it sets it a quarter tone low, and the D above it sets it to a quarter tone high. So if I open this up and I press the B, you'll see it go to 50 cents low. I'll press the C and you'll see it go to 0. And I'll press the D and it goes to a quarter tone high. So that way, if I want to just play a little bit, let's keep this open here so we can see it. I'll play that F, and then I want to hear the quarter tone sharp, then back, flat. Super easy to do. I just got my left hand doing the modification and my right hand playing notes that I want to hear. So it's just a nice practice tool, potentially an ear training tool. One thing I want to point out about this is that I didn't want to hear those low notes, these low C's and B's and D's while playing it, because that would be confusing. And so in the key map for direct, which is making the sound of the piano, I've deactivated those keys. So those keys won't make any sound. The keys around it will, but these will not. Okay, so super nice example of using bitKlavier in a very particular way. Okay, for this last example, we're actually going to look at a piece of mine called Seizing Song. It's from a piece called Songs That Are Hard to Sing, which I wrote for the Jack Quartet and So Percussion a few years ago. But before we get into it, I'm going to show you one of the things that motivated what I did in that piece. So let's look at tuning, and let's put it in a partial tuning, which uses a lot of the overtones up to the 13th partial to set the tuning. I'm going to just play. Okay, that's great. Now you'll notice that as we expect, the E, the third, because we're in partial tuning with a C fundamental, so the E is about 14 cents flat from equal temperament. We can look at that here. Oh, I need to connect. Let's do that actually, because this might be useful. Connect this here so we can see that this is 14 cents flat from equal temperament. Okay. Now let's say I want to move to a sonority where E is the fundamental, or maybe I want to be able to play. Ooh, that's interesting. I want to play an actual kind of like overtone dominant 7th chord on E. There we go. Cool, that sounds great. And now I'm going to go back to C. So I would set up modifications to do this. But the key thing I want to point out is this E. If I now switch the fundamental to E, it's actually different. It's different by 13 cents. Back to C. So this C is 63.863. Now it's at 64 because it's when I set the E to the fundamental as the fundamental, that becomes an equal tempered E. Now that might seem kind of fussy. It's actually not, and you'll see why in a moment. So the key is if I want this E to match this E, then what I need to do is when I'm with this fundamental, I need to set an offset of minus 13.7 cents. So now this E is 63.863. this E is also 63.863. I can show you very quickly how to make modifications to do this. So I'm going to set up this one to set the fundamental to C with an offset of 0. And I'm going to have another one set the fundamental to E with an offset of minus 13.7. And now I'm going to make a key map and have the low C on the keyboard, set it to that, and then I'm going to have another key map and have the low E set the tuning to the E fundamental. So C, then E. So this E is the same. They're the same E now. But I can have the two overtone tuned dominant seventh chords now with those two different fundamentals. Okay, so that is, there's a lot of important stuff in there that can be quite useful. It might seem finicky, but let me show you why it's not so finicky. This piece for solo percussion in the Jack Quartet has the string quartet in scordatura with an open C tuning, C, E, C, G, but with the violin E strings tuned to that just E, so 13.7 cents flat to equal temperament. And so that's an open string. It's basically non-negotiable. The Jack Quartet is truly extraordinary at being able to play with these subtle distinctions in tuning. So I mentioned earlier it might seem fussy, that difference. It's actually super meaningful. And if bitKlavier didn't make that small adjustment, it would actually beat really loudly, really prominently against the open strings and the violins, and really just change the nature of the harmony in the piece. So I'm going to play you a short excerpt from this piece, and then we'll look at how the patch is set up to work. So it's going to start somewhere in here, and you'll hear the set of 4 chords cycle around. Here we go. All right, we'll stop it there. Let me pull back up to the beginning of this. And now let me open up the bitKlavier gallery for this, and we'll take a look at it. Under tutorials, got a demo for this. Oh, actually, you know what? I will save this as another tutorial. So this is a movable, fundamental, and offset demo. Okay. So here is just a demonstration patch for these chords. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that we can see the music as well as bitKlavier. And so you'll see, I'm going to play this opening chord here. All right. Now, one thing to note in the notation, I've got a little slash through that E, and that means that through that C, I want that C to be played first because that's going to set the tuning. Let's go to the next page. Same thing, I've got a slash through the E, so that's going to reset the tuning, and you'll see it change. E with an offset here. So now, there it is. There's the E and the offset. So that E is the same now in both, matching the open string in the strings up here. Oops. So I can go back. Now we'll go to the next chord. I love this one. So now the E totally changes here. Listen to that, check that out, okay? So this is the 13th partial, so the E is now quite a bit sharp to equal temperament. And so you'll see in the strings they're actually told to play an F with this notation. This is the Helmholtz-Ellis just intonation system. She tells them to play an F that is tuned to that 13th partial. And then I'll go to the last chord in the sequence based on G. So now the E is back. So back to the beginning. So you can see all those changes happen here. And they're all happening, let me make this bigger again here, via these modifications. So I just have these modifications set to those bass notes. So those bass notes which have the slashes through them trigger the modifications, and the modifications simply set the fundamental and the offsets to what I want. So a lot of information in this one. Hopefully it will be of use to you, and check it all out. I'll post these galleries. So if you want to play with them directly, you can do that.